Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, most excellent friends?
It's Chrissy and Nathan from the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast.
It's a podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian
And their most excellent guests
adventure their way through the 80s movies we think we love
or might have missed
with our grown-up eyes to see how they hold up.
Join us for delightful discussion,
Rollicking recaps.
ratings, and deep-cut recommendations.
Plus, members get some extra fun chit-chat with the hosts after the show.
Download the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast today at truestory.fm.
Or find it wherever the finest podcasts are stored.
And do remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind.
Be excellent to each other and...
Party on.
Party on, dudes.
Oh, there you are. I was hoping I'd cross paths with you today. I'd like to invite you to visit the Story Well. It's a place where storytellers of all stripes gather. From improv performers to authors, screenwriters to playwrights, we all tell stories. But we're not here to talk about craft. We're here to make something out of nothing. Each episode of the podcast, your host, that's me, sits down with a creative person, and based on a series of random prompts, we get elements that we make into a story. Will it be a noir novel about King Kong? Or a Broadway musical about JFK? Even we don't know. That's the fun part. But what do you get out of this besides a good time with fun people? Simple. The idea is then yours. That's right. Whatever we come up with, we give it away for anyone to use however they'd like, no strings attached. It's like each episode comes with a free prize inside. The Story Well with Kyle Olson. We'll save you a seat at the table.
Hey, it's Lester and Kenan popping in here at the end of your Exorcist feed. Do you miss us?
Howdy, everybody.
Howdy. So you've gotten to the end. There's no more Exorcist Minute episodes, but we made our new friend, Mandy Kaplan, who invited us onto her show, Make Me a Nerd, which is super cool. We just recorded it with her, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, so go check that out. We talk about The Exorcist. We talk about our other shows. We talk about Mrs. Doubtfire quite a bit. But yeah, no, it'll give you a new perspective. And check out the show that Mandy's doing over there called Make Me a Nerd. And you might get nerdified on a couple of other things.
Yeah, Mandy goes every week with a new deep dive into nerddom, where she is not a nerd. She is a mom and a fan of reality TV and football. And she invited us on, which I thought was a little insulting to think of The Exorcist as nerddom. But after talking with her, she's convinced me. We are nerds, and you are nerds, and you will love it over there. That's Make Me a Nerd with Mandy Kaplan, also on truestory.fm.
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, and it is my mission to explore the world of nerd culture in ways I have never done before because I'm so mainstream, or I'm a little afraid, or sometimes I don't think I'm smart enough for it. I know this week is a bit of a tangent. It's not nerd culture per se, but this is a movie that people are extremely nerdy about, and no one more so than my guests. Two total strangers who I found on True Story FM and stalked them into being on my show. They host the Exorcist Minute, and I'm very excited to dive into this movie with my special guests, Kenan Diaz and Lester Ryan Clark. Hi.
Hi, Mandy. Thanks for having us.
Howdy.
Painless so far. So for those who don't know you guys, every time you speak, I need you to buzz in and say your name.
Oh, that's true. This is Kenan.
Yes, this is Lester.
And tell me about the Exorcist Minute, and tell me about you guys and your backgrounds. Tell me everything. I don't know you.
Well, okay, I guess I'll start. I had the idea to do this show back in 2022. It was going to be just like a little book club thing that I was going to do weekly or bi-weekly because I am a big fan of the Exorcist book by William Peter Blatty. I read it every Halloween, and I had a lot of things to say about it, but maybe not enough for a podcast. And then I started listening to this podcast called The Godfather Minute, which took the movie The Godfather and examined every single minute of that film exhaustively.
A film I have infamously never seen.
Mm.
Well, it's too late. Don't start now.
Yeah. It's
I already told you guys I'm an asshole, so
that
that's
ship has sailed.
yeah.
But no, it gave me the idea. I was like, wait a minute, because I have a friend who is a film professor back in my hometown at UNLV, and he's a big fan of the movie, and I'm a big fan of the book. So we decided to start our minute by minute podcast where we examine the movie The Exorcist minute by minute. Each episode is 1 minute, or each episode covers 1 minute. And I would kind of dip in with my findings from the book, and we would kind of do a comparison, but we would also just kind of like examine the whole Exorcist story under a magnifying glass.
Right.
And
Yeah.
do we know this friend? Is this friend someone we can reach out to, or
I think this friend is in here with us.
He's in here
What?
with us. Yes.
What?
Yeah.
This
so
friend is calling
it's
from inside the stream yard?
from inside the StreamYard. Yeah, it's me, and this is the first time Lester asked me to be on the show, and I've thought about podcasting before, but didn't think I was nerdy enough to do that, and I have proven myself wrong. I'm quite nerdy enough. So yeah, we've looked at the movie shot by shot. Lester says that we've been exhaustive. I like to say that we're exhaustive and exhausting. Like,
Yes.
that's our brand.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would think my husband says the same about me.
But I'm really, really glad that I got Kenan on board for this, just because there are so many things about film history, about cinematography, about directing, about script writing, just about like setting up a movie that I would have not been able to give to our listeners.
It's a perfect balance.
Mm.
I don't need a partner because I know everything.
There we go.
Now, what is your relationship to nerd culture? Are you guys into sci-fi, fantasy, role-playing games, any of that? Or is horror something you're nerdy about? Just give me an overview.
See, when we got the invite to be on here, I was a little insulted. I didn't think The Exorcist was nerdy enough to be on the show. I think, yeah, certainly I have little pockets of nerddom that I'll immerse myself in, like with the X-Men or something. But Lester, I think, is more in the horror and the monsters and the fantasy genre.
Yes, so fantasy and dark fantasy, gothic fantasy, stuff like that. So, by day it's Lord of the Rings, by night it's Dracula, that type of fantasy. I dip my foot into some sci-fi with maybe some like Cthulhu or stuff like that, but or some Bradbury.
It's not an explicit show. You can't use a word like Cthulhu.
Oh shoot!
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Let me say it in its native tongue.
I don't know what any of this is. Okay, either one of you play D&D? I'm taking a temperature here.
Not me.
Okay. Yeah, this is okay. This is very, very embarrassing for a nerd, but I've wanted to play D&D.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried a couple of times. Kenan, I think we talked about this on our show. But every single time I get into a D&D game, I'm like invited by like a DM or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the DMs who are. It's like, okay, you walk 3 steps and you trip on a pebble and you die, right? Or it's like okay, you take.
It's almost like a dog fight. They're inviting you to embarrass you, and
yes,
right?
yes.
Right.
Okay.
What do you do? Okay, I drink the potion. You die.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
they
love it.
line up their most attractive friends along the wall to embarrass you in front of them, so
Oh,
that
I
they
love it.
seem more attractive by
The
default.
ultimate revenge for a dungeon master, right?
And then characters that they have like invented that don't have any players to them kind of like come in and like save the day for you, and then they usher you to the next like little scene where you inevitably pick a blade of grass and die.
So, I don't know this about you though, Mandy. Like, I'm a scaredy cat actually, which is what it makes it weird that I'm on this show. So I guess I really am nerdy about like like classic Disney now that I think about it. That's my nerddom, right? But yeah, I'm too afraid. So I had to force myself to watch these horror things. And now you're watching a lot of horror stuff. I mean, are you afraid? Are you good with all that?
Okay, well, I just also did The Jungle Book with a real adult Disney. What does she call it? A Disney adult. And
Disney adult.
She does not like calling herself nerdy about Disney, but woo! I like horror movies. I'm not an obsessive person about anything except country music, fantasy football, musical theater. Like those are my mainstream passions, but I've always liked a good horror movie, and The Exorcist I've seen a couple of times throughout my life, and I would say it's the scariest movie I've ever seen.
Oh, good.
But I've never delved into it. You know, I mean, it was just like, oh shit, yeah, that was great, and then that was it. And I'm learning as a writer. I've written horror films, so I'm learning more and more about how passionate the fandom is about these genre films, and the hunger for them is just off the charts. So I have a real respect for it as an art form. This movie is so well done. I don't have to really close my eyes, but sometimes violence I can't handle. So
Yeah.
I watch a lot of horror movies, a lot for work, but I watch them all like, oh God, oh God, oh God. I don't like violence, which is such a weird aspect when you're diving into sci-fi and fantasy, Lord of the Rings, all of these things that I'm trying. A lot of it is very difficult for me. So, but I'm doing it.
For us, for at least for me, it's always been therapeutic to examine something under a microscope or in slow motion, the way we're doing with this movie, with The Exorcist. Watching it minute by minute, almost like in slow motion, and really paying attention to the set design, really paying attention to what the actors are doing on screen, how each of the special effects are done, because we dive into that, and how they had like how many like it was like 7 different beds to do all the different types of tricks and everything like that, and the machine to make the vomit and everything like that. And once you kind of like examine it like that, it kind of loses its scariness. But then we get a whole new level of scariness with all the kind of things that the actors suffered on set.
I've read a little. So, yeah, if you guys ever do a minute by minute of Friends, please, please, please. I'm in. I don't even need a rewatch. I'm in.
Oh,
so,
great.
Okay. So I sit down to watch The Exorcist, which my husband could not join me. He's terrified, and I don't blame him. And the first thing that comes up is the warnings.
Yeah.
It's violence, sexual content, foul language, smoking. And I couldn't even type them fast enough because there were so many across the screen. And I'm watching a lot of stuff these days. Never have I seen so many warnings across the screen.
Smoking. Oh my gosh.
Oh, she does. That's like how the movie opened. Or, after Iraq, we see Ellen Burstyn trying to light a cigarette in bed. Okay. So we start in Iraq. And everybody's seen this movie. I don't need to do a log line. But I'm wondering why we started in Iraq. It felt like you could lift that out and the movie would be better for it. Am I insulting you?
Oh, we've had this debate, and we've even, we read a lot of what fans say online and critics say online, and we've tried to thought experiment our way through and think about what that would be like. I think we both agree, Lester and I, that the Iraq scenes help us a lot, not just because that's how the book opens, right? Like, I think that we get to see this foreboding thing that isn't in Washington, and we get to kind of travel with it. We get to see that it is beyond just like, oh, it's obsessed with little girls in the modern day. It is ancient. And we get to, more than just hear about it or read about it in a book, we get to experience it being ancient and having its own kingdom back there and being disturbed in that kingdom.
Yes, this is something older. This is something bigger than whatever is going on in Washington. And the man who faces it in that prologue, in that beginning in Iraq, he disappears for the rest of the movie until the very end, and we almost kind of forget about him. We don't
Max
even
von Sydow, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we don't even know who he is. They don't say his name or anything like that until the very end. We find out that he's the Exorcist. Spoilers.
Right. You
But
can't spoil this movie.
I
You could try.
one of the things that watching this minute by minute does for you is you get to really, really pick it apart. And what we noticed in this viewing is the very first words spoken in this movie are the Muslim call to prayer, the Adhan, and it's if you translate it, it is God is the greatest. And it's kind of just like a precursor. It's kind of like a hint. It's like, hey, it's like things are going to get really, really scary, but it's going to be okay. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie needed kind of like a minute by minute examination.
Well, that leaves me curious because I didn't, of course, notice those were the first words spoken. But I did say at some point, I don't even need my notes because I know I came up with this. Is this a pro-Catholic movie? Is this a pro-religion movie that we're supposed to embrace? I mean, it doesn't make the priesthood look good. Not a recruitment film for priesthood. But
Well,
ultimately, God wins out, right?
Right.
God defeats
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah, I think Lester has an answer to that, like looking at the text. I have an answer as a film historian, and then also my parents who lived through this time. They were 14 and 15 or so, and they were Catholic. And it was a recruitment tool at their diocese in Honolulu. So their
Really?
their youth pastor had
Have
invited
them dial in. I want to ask them some questions.
Well, my mother did not go. She was still too afraid to go. But their youth pastor, asked, and my father went with his youth pastor to see The Exorcist, and that was what some critics like Pauline Kael criticized the movie for. They said it was Catholic propaganda.
Propaganda,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
This is we kind of had a joke on our show. This is the most Catholic movie you will ever see. It is Catholic from front to back. Kenan and I were both raised Catholic, and I remember my mom telling me that their priests, when it came out, were recommending that people go and see it. Maybe to scare them straight. We even had a priest as a guest on several times, and he talked about how, like, when he was going through ministry, he went and he saw the film with a bunch of other
In their
students.
seminary dorm. Yeah.
Fascinating. Oh, I feel like I've really tapped into something, and I'm very proud of myself. I don't have a Pete. Could we have like a victory theme song for me? Okay, so once we leave Iraq, we're in their kitchen, and I have to point out, what year was this? 72?
They're shooting in 72. Yeah.
Yes.
This kitchen had stainless steel appliances and a commercial griddle. I was very impressed by the kitchen. I watch a lot of HGTV.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So one thing I think a lot of people miss, I mean, I think it's explicit enough in the movie, but like it's a little bit more explicit in the book, is Chris McNeil is a big time movie star. Big enough to where in the book she's having dinner invites to the White House.
That's
She
in the
turns
movie.
down. Yeah, she turns down.
That's in the movie.
invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, "What is this?" Yeah.
It's like, I don't have time for this. I have to go spend time with my daughter, whom I love, and everything. Yeah.
Well, I just was blown away by the kitchen because I mean, it just looked so modern, and that was fantastic.
Well, see, that range above the stove needs to be shiny because Captain Howdy's face needs to appear in it
Right.
in the special edition.
And go blah blah blah. Blah.
Oh no, I didn't watch the special edition.
Good. That's
Yeah.
part of the nerddom of The Exorcist. People fighting over which of these cuts is better, and you kind of to do it like a Star Wars, special edition, and fight over it with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So you see Captain Howdy in.
You see Captain Howdy a couple of times.
Oh.
In the regular cut, you see it's that white kind of like scary face that flashes for
Oh, that's Captain Howdy.
That's Captain Howdy. That's our best
I have
friend.
so many questions about that face.
Oh
but-
yeah. So Captain Howdy in the original cut, he only appears in people's dreams, so you can kind of be like, okay, this is only happening to Reagan. This is only happening to Karis. Yeah.
I remember. Sorry to interrupt. I feel like as a kid, I thought, oh, that's subliminal. Like they're just trying to scare us extra. It didn't feel like it belonged. It felt like, in case you got relaxed, boom, we're gonna hit you with this face.
Yeah, that's a good question because they are frames long. Sometimes it's like one frame of Captain Howdy there. So
And it makes you think, am I seeing things? Like what?
Yes.
What just happened? And if you're in the movie theater, you can't rewind.
That's a
Exactly.
big
And
reason why people would go back over and over again,
exactly.
because they had
Brilliant.
differing views of what
Brilliant.
happened. They would come out of the theater and go, "Did you see that? I didn't see that," and they would go back the next day.
Right.
And there would be
Right.
like some kind of like it's like, oh, well, if you go and you watch The Exorcist and you see the devil's face, then you're gonna
You're
die
gonna
or something like
die.
that.
And the
So
trick is that everyone's going to die no matter what.
yes.
That's how they got around the contract.
Well, I did read that was a makeup test,
Yep.
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
I just read that
That
5
was
minutes
going to
ago, but
be that was going to be that was going to be Reagan's possessed makeup, but then they were like, it looks a little bit too like clowny. So they were like, okay, let's use it as like subliminal kind of like boo, type things.
yeah. So we're in their home, and the way this is shot, as we're seeing Chris putter around the house and all of that, it is, and even the priests when we go to them, it's so voyeuristic. It's so grounded, and I felt like, should I be allowed to watch these people in their mundane day-to-day activities? It's so well done, and I know that was a very 1970s way of filming and movies, but it's perfectly done.
Listeners, if you decide, if you've already watched this, watch it again, or if you haven't watched it yet, when you do watch it, every time that happens, ask yourself, who are you? Who is spying on the McNeils right now? Because we have a lot of instances where the camera is kind of like peeking around the banister or peeking around like old furniture in the attic when Chris is up there. Who is that? Who are you right now? Are you Reagan? Are you Captain Howdy? Are you, because that I think is what Friedkin is doing. He is either making us a participant, we are part of the family that is fighting this monster, or we are the monster sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's good.
Yeah, there's
God,
a lot
this
of
movie.
there's a lot of shots where we start in the middle of a shot and then we realize that the camera's actually like in a room down the hall or something. Right. The
Yeah.
camera will pull out and reveal that like we're not actually in the room where we think we are.
I can't believe you're going to make me watch it again, but now I want to watch it again. That is such a cool observation and a cool role for us to play. Or,
Right.
I mean, talk about it's audience participation.
Yeah.
I'm a
right.
theater
Mhm.
baby, so it's like you're really saying to the audience, you got to do some thinking here. You got to fill in these gaps. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you
brilliant.
got to be jellicle yourself. We're up here being jellicle. You got to be jellicle too.
Oh yeah.
You don't want me to sing Cats, right? Or do
I
you?
I do.
Kenan, I feel like you're giving me a cue.
I do. I have a cat right here. I'm going to try to pull it.
Are you a cat guy?
He is a
Oh.
cat daddy. We that's the nickname we gave him in our show. He is the original cat daddy.
My cats can't come in my studio, but I have 3 of them.
I got 4.
Oh, Kenan, new best friend. Okay. So personal question, because as I was watching this, I realized, I have not seen this movie since I became a parent.
Oh,
And
wow,
I am the
yeah.
parent of a perfect 14-and-a-half-year-old son. By the
Mhm.
way, he's perfect in every way. But very different experience as a parent. Are you guys parents?
Neither of
No.
us is. No.
Okay. It's so much scarier because you're thinking, what would I do if my kid was convulsing like this? What would I do if my kid spoke in this voice? I mean, it's just so different. It hit me on a cellular level that
Mhm.
when you're watching it and you're not a parent, you're like, oh, that's scary.
Mhm.
But I was frustrated with Chris that she didn't throw herself on Reagan
Mhm.
to envelop her and hold her. And, she was so freaked out by her own kid in a way that I don't know. If my kid were convulsing like that, I would do anything to take that pain away in that moment. I'm a
Yeah.
much better parent than Ellen Burstyn. I think
Yeah,
that's
probably. I think that's one of the undercurrents here. I mean, so we were looking at it historically and thinking about, the 1970s is often thought of as like a second golden age of cinema, right? A lot of the people who make movies now are like the 70s is better than the 50s. They're wrong, but the 70s is the better period, and a lot of it is devoid of like. We think of the 70s as being second wave feminism, and like where are those movies about second wave feminism? And Lester and I think we're agreeing. I think that they're there, but they're in these genre movies like this, The Exorcist and Alien and Annie Hall, and like we thought a lot about this, about like the pressures that Chris has to be at this time period, right, mommy and daddy, of this
Because
relationship.
Howard's gone. Yeah.
Because her husband's gone, and all these men. It's all men in
That
her
son
life
of a
telling
bitch.
her, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's
No,
on a
exactly.
yacht in the Mediterranean. Can't call his daughter on her birthday.
Right. That was a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of like her, having to police her emotions, perform in different routes, and I wonder if that's part of what's going on. Is that maybe she does want to throw herself on the bed and be with her daughter, but she also has to worry about paying the bills and also being strong and convincing these. This is the thing that we got the most pushback from our fans, or like arguments about our arguments, was about like whether the doctors are not believing her because she's a woman, whether the priests weren't believing her because she's a woman. So we were in that camp, but a lot of our fans didn't see that, or didn't want to see that.
Yeah. Mandy, you say that you were frustrated by Chris. I think Kenan and I were frustrated by these goddamn doctors.
88 doctors.
88 doctors.
You say this thing, I say the other thing.
And we were just examining this, like, minute by minute. You see Chris, I mean, like in like, Saturday Night Live and all that, like they do the parodies of Chris and she's this hysterical. It's like, oh my God, my daughter, and all that. But I've
never seen it. Now I'm going to watch that.
We'll give you some links.
This.
Yeah, please.
We only see these moments when it really, really counts, when she is on her last legs, when, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. The rest of the time, she is doing her best to control her emotions while talking to these pompous, arrogant doctors, and all of them just being like, wow, you're going to just do this and you just do this. And it's like, you wouldn't know that because you're abroad. And da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And her being able to get them to the next stage of examinations, like, okay, now we have to do an angiogram. Now we have to do a cardiogram. Now we have to take her to a psychologist. Now we have to do this. And all of this is happening because Chris is not letting up, because Chris is forcing them to essentially do their jobs and not dismiss this as, female hysteria or whatever.
I guess I was even thinking maybe before all the doctors, like when Reagan starts to act funny, or when she first is thrashing around and saying, mommy, I don't know, Chris felt a little like, oh, what do I do? I'm scared of you, rather than taking her child in her arms. But I might be mistaken. Lester is judging me.
I love that.
I'm mistaken.
No, I love that point of view from a parent. Yeah, we had a lot of our listeners talking about their own parentage, and that's super interesting. That's just not something that we can glean from books, I guess. So although we try.
I think something also from our standpoint is she doesn't want any of this to get out, or she doesn't want her daughter to be taken away from her, because that's kind of like the looming threat is, we find out that she had with the help of the demon, she killed her best friend. And at any moment, the demon can just, take hold of the daughter and say, hey, I killed, Burke Dennings, and, now you got to lock this girl up. And, so.
That guy had to die, though. How annoying was he?
Oh, he's our favorite to do, though.
Oh, yes, no.
Drunk.
He was our favorite gag.
Lay it on me, Burke Dennings, the drunk director. We've got impressions?
Oh, go ahead, Lester.
It sounds a little bit like a male Julia Childs.
William Peter Blatty does the audiobook, and he does a great job doing all the voices.
And his Burke Dennings is a little bit like this.
Mm-hmm.
But he's even more irascible in the book.
Okay, so now I'm connecting some dots. We're talking about feminism, and the little girl says, if you want to invite Mr. Dennings to my birthday, you can. And Chris says, why would I invite him? We're just friends.
Right.
And I've always thought, like, well, they're probably dating. But then I watched it this time and I thought, he's so unappealing. But
he's her gay best friend, right?
Is he gay?
I think so.
This is something that,
like, oh, does she have to sleep with him because he's the director?
Because he's the director. That could still happen too in 1972, and he's gay. But no, I think he's the gay best friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the book, the way that I read it, he was just kind of this harmless and also just kind of helpless person that Chris is kind of being mom to.
Okay.
just that, but they are like truly good friends. And then as we did the show, I learned all about queer coding and kind of how this is worked into films with the help of Kenan, and that like now I watch it, I can't see it any other way. Like, okay, yeah, no, it's impossible. But the important thing is from Reagan's perspective, from the daughter's perspective, Chris is kicking her father out and replacing him with this new man. And of course, that's what the demon is going to be whispering to her. It's like, hey, it's like, you got to get rid of this Burke Dennings guy, and then maybe your mom and dad will get back together. Those are the, things we kind of like theorized are going on in Reagan's heads. Captain Howdy is talking to her about, you need to kill Burke Dennings.
You would think Satan would have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
If he's going to return to the planet. But okay. I mean, whatever floats your boat.
Well, okay. I mean, that's a good question. Who is Captain Howdy's target in this? Is it Reagan? Is it Chris? Is it the old priest? Is it the young priest?
Is it the church entire?
Is it the church entirely?
The city
right,
of Washington, D.C. on the swamp?
I mean,
right, yeah.
Mass destruction as much as they could achieve through a 12-year-old girl.
This is a big question near the end. The young priest, Father Karras, he asks, like, why this girl, right? And you look at her, and she really doesn't have a whole lot going on. We don't really like learn about a lot about her except by, from Chris, like after she's been possessed. But if you look at everybody else, every other character has skeletons in the closet. Every other character is guilty about something. Every other character is possessed by like their own demons, right? And that's what Captain Howdy wants to do. He wants to point a finger at everybody. He's like, hey, you, Karras, like, what about your mom that just died?
Right.
It's like, hey, Chris, like, you're a terrible mother. Look at what happened to your daughter, right? It's like, that's I think is the goal of our demon, is to use this central focal point, this object of love, this girl, to kind of hurt everybody around her. And
That
to
shit
destroy
is
the faith
deep.
of everybody. Yeah.
I would like to talk about Tatum O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen Paper Moon?
Sure have. Yep.
I have not yet.
You
No.
haven't seen it yet. That's good.
Kenan, did she deserve the Oscar over Linda Blair?
I would vote for Linda Blair for this, but have you? Yeah. Well, Tatum O'Neal is a very interesting performance. I'm not going to say she's bad in it. She is younger than Linda Blair, so I think that's part of like, oh wow, she's even younger than this one that we really liked.
Hollywood's
earlier.
obsessed with youth. Trust
yeah,
me.
exactly. But this is a big thing that I'm fascinated by. As a gay Exorcist fan, like, I like all of the Oscar stuff with it, but there were some controversies about this at the Oscars. I don't know if that came across in your research yet.
No, my only research or anecdotal story that I remember is that Linda Blair got typecast and she had a tough time after this, even though she was so good.
And Tatum O'Neal did as well, right? My argument is
she
that
turned
there
out
was
to have a great life.
She had a good life. I think Linda Blair says that she had a good life.
As long as she's happy,
she doesn't seem to resent things. At least that's the story she says in her interviews. But I think there's only room for one Jodie Foster at a time in the 1970s, and then Jodie Foster came out, and that was Jodie Foster. But the one of the controversies at the Exorcist at the Oscars was this question about whether that happens with a lot of child actors back then. Are they really acting, right? Like is this really what's going on? And there were questions. People were sort of whispering around the corners, like, have they exploited this girl, right? Which is a little bit different from Tatum O'Neal, right? Have you exploited her by using her as the sexual object, making her say these terrible things? By her account, she said that she when she was asked by Billy Friedkin, hey, do you know what this movie's about? She's like, oh, I read the book, yeah. And you know what happens in the scene with the crucifix? Oh yeah, I masturbate with the crucifix, and like she was totally like sane and totally fine with all of that.
Right.
But then the other controversy was that as people were looking into the movie more, the question of like, well, who plays Reagan? Because Linda Blair plays Reagan, but the demon is voiced by Mercedes McCambridge.
Mercedes McCambridge, yes.
Yeah, and that wasn't known. She wasn't credited in the initial screenings of it. And then people would read about, well, she had all of these stunt doubles, right? Eileen Dietz, who plays the Captain Howdy face, right? So there is at least 4, if not how many did you count, Lester?
It was
People who
4
play
or
Reagan.
5
4 or
because we
5,
have
depending on how you count.
because we have Linda Blair
Right.
as Reagan herself, and then we have Mercedes McCambridge as the
Mhm.
voice,
Right.
and then we have Eileen Dietz, who is the Captain Howdy Face, doing not just the Captain Howdy Face, but like a couple of the
Big
stunts.
stunts, right?
Yeah. And then we had, I think it was Annie Mills do the spider walk
Right.
because she was a gymnast. And then there was one more. I think we found it out
There
on
was
the
one
show.
more that we were having trouble looking in the picture whether that was her or not. So 4 or 5 different people who played her, and I think that started this kind of smear campaign about, like, you know, was she
All
really just a
actors have
kid?
stunt doubles.
Hey,
All
hey,
actors.
I get that, but you heard this with Natalie Portman with Black Swan the same way. Like, did she really? You know, if she didn't do all the dances, does she deserve it? She won the Oscar, obviously, but yeah, people who don't know what they're talking about say this all the time, Mandy.
Yeah, I think it was. You could chalk it
Harsh
up
reality.
you could chalk it up to Linda Blair's performance being so good, right, and so convincing under all of that makeup, and then with the added voice of Mercedes McCambridge, which, by the way, Linda Blair still had to say all of those things, and then she was acting. They just took out her voice, and if anything, Mercedes McCambridge had to match the cadence of Linda Blair because Mercedes McCambridge did it second. So she had to. It was almost a little bit less acting on Mercedes's part because she had to match the tone of Linda Blair. But I think you put that all together, you put that on the big screen, people see it, people are scared by it, and they're like, they're computers.
Right. Well,
It has to
special
be.
effects.
Has to be computers.
It's so good that they chalk up the goodness of the performance. It has to be doctored in some way, which, like, the most basic parts were doctored, but the performance, acting through all of that makeup and through the dubbing and everything like that, that was all
Incredible.
Linda Blair. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But also when she's in the bed before she's possessed and Ellen Burstyn is like brushing her hair away from her face, and it's this intimate, voyeuristic moment. That's when I'm like, I should not be in this young girl's bedroom watching her mom,
That's when you're
coddle
Captain
her to
Howdy
sleep.
watching who you're gonna get.
That could be. But Linda Blair was so natural and so lovely, and I just, to hell with everyone who didn't think she deserved the Oscar.
I would have voted
I have
for her.
strong Oscar thoughts, Kenan. That's a whole separate podcast we could do.
We could do that, yeah.
Well, I made a weird note that in the story, it's brilliant to kill off Burke Dennings because then Chris is never torn about work again. It's not
Yeah,
right.
that movie's not happening now.
Right.
If they didn't kill him, though, she'd be like, oh my God, my daughter needs all this help, but I signed a contract. I have to go to work. So this is just like the production has shut down.
Production shut down. We don't get back to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here's a little inconsistency that I question. So she is fully possessed at this point. This is probably an hour and 5 minutes into the movie. And they bring her to the doctors, and they know something's severely, severely wrong. But then they put her in the car and they carry her up the stairs, and no one's afraid of her because she's sleeping. It just seems a little strange that all of this happens in her room at night when she's sleeping, but no one's afraid of her in these scenes.
I wonder about that. Think she's hopped up on something, Lester? That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you should see what I do to my cats before we start recording, but to keep them quiet.
Is this tuna with? You just hear like 5 thuds. Yeah.
Wait, he has 4 cats.
I got. The 5th one's me, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
You did a taste
of
test.
my
You're
own
like,
medicine. Yeah.
Creme de la creme a la Edgar. Is that the? Yeah, that's the thing. Aristocats.
Yeah. But that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't really thought of that because I guess when we were watching it, beat by beat, we're like, she just loves her so much, and it must be hard to see your child as a monster. And even when you get, she's like smacked Chris across the face and broken Ellen Burstyn's actual back in real life forever.
I read that too. Yeah,
that was let's not blame that on the devil. That was Friedkin.
That was Friedkin doing that. Yeah. But I don't know. You just want to believe that they're okay, at least for this moment, maybe.
Yeah. In the book, I think we delve a little bit deeper into drugs are the only thing that are allowing for moments of peace. And as the possession gets deeper and deeper, it takes more and more drugs to calm Reagan down to a point where they can kind of like carry her back up to the bed. But then you could also look at it, in a way of, what is Captain Howdy's goal? Does Captain Howdy want Reagan to be locked up in an asylum where he can't hurt anybody?
But
Or
they don't
does
know
he
that. The
want...
housekeeper who's carrying her doesn't know
Oh yeah,
Captain
no.
Howdy.
This is all Captain Howdy's game plan. He wants the two priests to come over. He wants...
I'm astonished that a housekeeper would be like, let me carry the child that just
Oh,
tried
yeah.
to murder us all.
I
Let
see
me
what
carry
you're
her
saying,
up to
yeah.
bed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
I mean, I'm not discounting what you're saying from a deeper level and from the perspective of the book, but did anyone in the book say, well, once she was sleeping, we felt safe getting her in the car and driving her across town? And
Not about that scene specifically, but there are some internal monologues about like the weird peace that you get once she has, like passed out, and then like how like the double-edged sword of like what it is to see this little girl like weak and starving and dehydrated because they're less afraid of her.
I think Captain Howdy has given them a pattern of, it's like chaos and then peace and then chaos and then peace. And then so they know, okay, this is like, this is the time that we can move, that we can get her back up to the bed, and we can bathe her, or we can, do whatever. And Captain Howdy is letting that play out because he wants something more.
you said bathing, and that's the only bath scene is after the party when she comes down and says, you're going to die. And
Yeah.
then pees. And I imagine how many parents have dealt with something pretty similar, like their kid walking into a social situation and saying, Mommy, my stomach hurts, and, having an accident, or probably not, you're going to die. But, it just hit me so differently as a parent,
I bet, yeah.
because as a parent, you're like, yeah, that could happen. And you would just take your kid up and give them a bath and put them to bed and hope it doesn't happen again.
Right. For us, the scary part of that scene is her in the bath with her and Reagan not answering, not responding at all. So it's like, honey, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, is there anything you want to talk about? And her just being completely vacant. And I imagine for a parent, like not being able to reach them, not being able to figure out what's going on because they won't communicate must be equally terrifying.
I mean, I prefer it when my kid doesn't talk.
Yes.
Yeah. When spoken to.
If.
Yeah. If that. Yeah. So I have a historical question about 1973 when this movie came out.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure you guys have the answer.
We'll see.
There's a moment where she says, lick me, cunting daughter.
Uh-huh.
My goodness.
Did I get that quote right?
You got it pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the main words in there that were necessary for this context. Yeah.
So it's 1973. Everyone's going to see this movie. What was the reaction? I mean,
It
that had
was
to be extreme.
extreme. So the first F word in a mainstream movie is in 1970 in MASH. So, and that is in this football game, and it's an ad lib because I forget exactly what happens, but somebody
throwing yellow flags.
Yeah,
Yellow flags, right?
exactly, right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of mess up with the stunt, and then somebody says the F word, and then Altman decided to keep that in. So that's the first time. So for
70.
3 years, 3 years to go to that to lick me. Do you know what she did? Your cunting daughter, right? Like that's very, very extreme. So this movie almost got an X rating, which was still around. The X rating back then wasn't for pornography; it was just for something that was more extreme than R. So what's it called? Midnight Cowboy was an X and that kind of thing. Clockwork Orange, and but they barely got to. They argue basically that it's Catholic and it's a well-meaning film, and they got it changed to a regular R. But yeah, it was shocking. That was very, very, very shocking, and I'm not sure though. In some of these crowded theaters, how much people could hear some of the swearing. Right, because it was how scary it was. There's a lot of talk about how like just raucous the audiences were.
And were there protests outside the movie and stuff?
I never saw any protests outside.
Yeah.
No, not that I saw, Lester.
I
might
was
be thinking of-
Christian or right-wing conservative. we don't want this kind of language and imagery.
I have not come across that. No.
Yeah, it was very. I think a lot of Christians, well, at least the Catholics, were very, very pro this movie because it's like no, this is real. This could really happen. This could, like you need to see this to, your soul is at stake. You need to see this. As far as like outside the movie theater, you might be seeing pictures of like people lining up like around the block and down the street to see it.
Oh, I was asking. I didn't say there were protests. I was asking if there were protests.
Yeah, so what we mean is, the reason I'm pretty sure, so I haven't read anything, which doesn't mean they don't exist, but there's a lot of footage, especially in the Christmas season of 1933, of news crews going to film the outside of those theaters. So because they were so crazy, people were passing out in the theaters. They had stationed EMTs.
The vapors,
yeah, and it was
specifically
waiting 8 hours. Right, yeah, we'd wait, through 3 screenings, and but people were passing out specifically because of the medical scenes. If we didn't say that,
right?
Yeah, it wasn't the demon stuff.
So even before they got to the demon,
it was intense.
So there were news crews outside of the theaters in the major cities. So if there were protests, I think we would have seen it in our research, but that might have happened out there. Yeah.
Just getting back really quickly to the Cunting daughters.
Always,
if we could.
Hey, here's a clip I can't use on social media.
No, you're actually talking about the worst minute. We dubbed it the worst minute of the film.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to know what that was.
Yeah, and when we talk about was like, how are we gonna what are we gonna do? How are we gonna cover this? We have to talk about it like it's a minute of the film. So I decided to do kind of like a cold open in the voice of Gilbert Gottfried doing The Aristocrats. But instead of doing the joke The Aristocrats, we just narrate the whole movie. And that's how we do it. But
that's how we got through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the grunting waters. I mean, there's
But so that moment you're talking about when her head turns around and she's like, "Do you know what she did, your cunting daughter?" So if you don't know, that's actually Burke Dennings's voice. And that's the whole reason that Chris is now afraid to let any of this get out. She can't go back to the doctor. She can't go to anybody except a priest, because basically the demon is saying, "Hey, I know what happened. She killed me. I'm Burke Dennings. So and if you let anybody find this out, your daughter's going to be taken away forever."
I didn't get that. Thank you.
I didn't either until I was watching the movie and then reading the book. So it's the most famous moment from the movie is this head turn. And obviously it works without you making this connection because everybody loves this moment and it scares the crap out of them. But the entire point is, doing the impression of Burke Dennings as in, I have Burke Dennings' soul in me right now. It's in this body. And then the neck turning is a reference to Burke Dennings' neck breaking. Right. That's
okay.
Right.
So actually,
I know, but I had seen this movie, 8 times or something before. Before we did the show, I was like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
So slight little difference from the book. In the book, her head doesn't turn all the way around because then she would die. This is just kind of like, movie effects and, the scare aspect of it. But the idea was that it's like, hey, do you see this? Do you see, how your daughter's neck is almost breaking? That's what I did to Burke, or that's what your daughter did to Burke Dennings.
Right. And I could do that to your daughter if you're not careful.
And the hint was supposed to be because cunting is a British swear word. And that's what, so I was like, "Do you know what she did, your cunting daughter?" That was what it was supposed to be.
I didn't get that. Wow. You guys are shedding such light in such a fun way. Thank you. I truly, I didn't connect that. And I think you can see this movie 14 times and not get that, because it sounds
can see it 167
similar to Mercedes McCambridge and, Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. How many times have you guys seen this movie?
Oh, God.
I mean, having to break it down minute by minute. I'm assuming he doesn't.
So I'd seen it. I said 8 times before, but I think I'd only seen it 3 times actually before we did this. And then if I were doing the show over again, I would have watched it once all the way through before we started, but I didn't for some reason.
You just paused at a minute?
Yeah, I just did minute by minute. So maybe I'd watch like 5 minutes of it at a time to get the context. So that's me, and I will probably never watch it again.
I think we've seen enough of it for our lifetimes. Like we would go home for like Christmas break or something like that, and our friends would be like, "Hey, I know what movie you want to watch," and we'd be like, "No, that's work. That's
That's the least that last movie I want to see ever
Yeah.
again.
Well, it's funny because when I did Jungle Book with the beautiful Justine Huxley, I said to her, "Well, did you rewatch it?" And she said, "No, I didn't have to rewatch it. I've seen this movie a whole bunch."
Right.
But there are very few movies I could hop on a podcast and discuss without having to quickly rewatch. So my question to you is, what are some of those other movies that if I said, I want to talk about this in depth for an hour, you would not have to rewatch? Kenan, go.
Yeah, for me, two movies from when I was like 9 and 10, Sleepless in Seattle and The Lion King, I think, which I've seen more than anything. And I would not need to prep at all for either of those. And I haven't seen Sleepless in Seattle in like 10 years, but I could do
It's
it.
such a good one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Kenan on this. I'm gonna say Lion King for sure. That's
Okay.
come up in our show actually a couple of times. Another movie that mysteriously just keeps on coming up in all of our shows. When I guess when things get too scary is Mrs. Doubtfire.
I love
It's
it.
it's kind of become a running gag where like we're in the middle of talking about The Exorcist and it's this very, serious, moment. And suddenly we're like, who was a worse father than Howard was Daniel Hilliard.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
He's
was
the
a
worst.
drive-by fruiting. Yeah.
Don't get it started, Mandy.
Yeah, I realized there are very few. I think Princess Bride for me is that. And as I said in my episode with Justine, Waiting for Guffman. I know by heart. That's my favorite movie of all time. But I just think that's an interesting thing. You can love a movie and you could say, "Oh, I've seen that movie a bunch." But there are very few movies we could all just sit down and really pull apart without having to rewatch. Or maybe I just am an old lady with terrible memory. But that's a possibility
I
too.
think my boyfriend would be Guffman and Princess Bride as well. So I think those are his. Yeah.
Oh, will you have him call
Absolutely.
me?
I will.
I would love to know him. That's my kind of guy. Okay. I want to point out just a random praise because I'm sure William Friedkin needs my praise at this point. But the sound design,
Yeah.
when they're in the house and the breathing and the high-pitched whispery voices, it's insane. I don't know that I've ever watched somebody walk through a house and felt so creeped out. And I've seen a lot of horror movies, but this was like next level. It's clearly hell existing in this home.
Yeah.
It's like the house is breathing.
Yes.
Right.
And whispering. And
Yeah.
did it win for sound design?
It
Or was
won
that
for best adapted screenplay and for sound design. Yes.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I feel vindicated in some way.
At least
Thank
that,
you.
right? There was
Thank
no
you.
makeup Oscar at this time, so it didn't win makeup. But did
Whoa,
win
but-
sound. Yeah.
I mean, retroactively, we've got to make that happen.
I think so. Yeah.
I have a few campaigns now retroactively I need to make
Right.
happen.
I'll go march to the streets right now with you.
Oh, Kenan, let's go. Oh, okay. Jason Miller, who played Father Karras. I'm not familiar with him at all. And he did not work a lot.
He
No.
did
20
work
credits
in
on IMDb?
theater. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It was a lot of stage stuff.
Okay.
And he was a playwright. And right before getting cast in this, he had won the Pulitzer Prize for one of his plays.
That championship season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so he had a whole other
Pulitzer
world.
Prize-winning playwright.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another actor who was cast already in that role. It was
Stacy Keach.
Stacey Keach from Prison
What?
Break. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Friedkin met Miller and was like, oh, never mind, and went and uncast Stacey Keach for Miller. He
They
just had
paid him off
exactly
and
what he wanted. Yeah, he looked like a boxer. He looked like he had troubles. So he mostly did theater and had kind of an abbreviated life. But his son is Jason Patrick, the actor from Speed 2. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Lost Boys.
Yeah. Lost Boys.
Right?
Yeah.
Jason
That's the
Patrick?
one I should say instead of Speed 2, but there you go.
Speed 2.
But I think
Womp
that's one of
womp.
the benefits of this casting is a lot of them
Jason
were.
Miller's son is Jason Patrick. I'm
Yep.
sorry, I need to
Mhm.
wrap my brain around that.
Yeah, I think he took his dad's name as his stage name, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Jason.
Lester, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry to
Oh,
interrupt
sorry,
you.
no. But I think, and Kenan, I think you'll agree, like one of the benefits of this casting is that these aren't people that like when the movie starts, like, oh, I know him. That's
Right.
Stacey Keach, right?
Right.
Or like Marlon Brando famously wanted to do, was it Father Karras?
Yeah, Father Karras.
And
Yeah.
Friga was like, no, because then everyone's going to be watching.
It'd
It's
be
like,
a
oh, that's
Brando
Marlon Brando.
picture. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
No, it had that feel of, oh, is that really a priest? Is that
Right.
real?
Mhm.
Like, did they pull this guy off the street? It
And
was
some of them were.
Some of them are
were
real
actually,
priests.
like the president of the university, Father Birmingham, was a priest. There were a couple of just regular folks. They took up off the street, and there was like, oh, hey, be this homeless guy that Karras interacts with, or a lot of the orderlies, a lot of the hospital staff were real hospital staff, and that
and
was
one
one
of
of the
them was Linda Blair's mother.
Yes, she
one
is
of
I
in
the
read
there
that.
somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
and then like probably one of our favorite performances of all time is Vasiliki Miliaros, who plays Mrs. Karras, and she was a theater actor who Friedkin saw in a Greek diner. I think it's sometimes misreported that she was working there, which I don't think was happening. But yeah, so he cast her as Mrs. Karras, and that's just an amazing performance for someone who had
Dear
Yeah.
never
Oh.
been on camera
Why you
before, as
do
far as
this
we
to
saw.
me?
That
That was
God.
Yeah,
for
that
Kenan
gets
and
to us.
I. Those were the hardest
Oh,
minutes to
absolutely.
cover. With your mom looking at you like, "Why?" It's like no. It's like, give me the demon, give me the all the other scary stuff. I don't want to cover this. Ah.
I had the thought I wrote, was Stallone never up for this role? Because this would have been before he was
Hmm.
That
Stallone.
would have been before Rocky. Yeah, I
Right.
don't
So it
know. I don't
just
know if he
seemed
would
like
have been.
physically, he looked
We
like a
did
Father
make
Karras
some
to me.
We
comparison. I
made a lot
think
of
I said
comparisons,
he
right?
looks like Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
looks like Rocky, but
Right.
I don't
In
think
the
he
gray
was
sweats, I
ever
guess.
right. I don't think he was ever up for that. I think so this time the same year he would have been in Bananas by Woody Allen in 1971 or whatever. I mean, like, yeah, so I don't think he was big enough to even be seen, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, if it
But
were
that's
made today, it would be Gabriel Byrne. We all agree, right?
well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Done.
okay.
But that is one thing to pay attention to is we have our two priests. One is physically strong. He's young and he's physically strong, but he's very weak in his faith. And then our older one who comes in later is physically frail. He's coughing his lungs up, but he is the one who is strong in his faith.
Okay. I have one last deep question
Oh, okay.
before we wrap this puppy up. If you can believe it, an hour has flown by.
Oh my goodness.
So, what are your theories about why she couldn't speak in foreign tongues? The holy water fake out.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy, I'm a can of worms. I wrote, I feel like it was clear this was the devil, but it was not all knowing or almighty, and that planted doubt.
Can I get this, Kenan?
Yeah, but let's praise Mandy first.
Yes.
She really
yes,
wants
absolutely.
us to. Something about her body language makes me see that she wants some praise. Good, Mandy. That's a great question. You're going to get beat up on the message boards maybe by some of the nerds out there, but yeah, go ahead, Lester.
So it is revealed a little bit later that our Father Karras is undergoing a crisis of faith, right? I think I've lost my faith, Tom. He's not even sure if God exists. Pay attention to how our demon performs all of these, like, quote unquote miracle. Well, I guess you can't call it a miracle if it's a demon. It's like these diabolical, these
Right.
anti-miracles,
These
right?
tricks,
All of these things have a scientific explanation, right? He's not shooting fire out of Reagan's eyes. He's not making well, he is making things levitate, but that's a little bit later. But the speaking in tongues, in the book, it's a little bit more explicit that Reagan is only speaking in languages that she could have possibly picked up from the Swiss housekeepers, Willie and Carl, or from Sharon, because Sharon is her tutoring her with French and things like that.
Okay.
The one thing, when he's speaking back and forth with Latin and Greek, she answers with "la plume de ma tante," right? Which, if you translate in French, that means the pen of my aunt, which is a very basic beginner level French exercise that teaches family members, that teaches household objects like pen, and it teaches ownership, like say, possession, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is something that like any like first level, textbook, reader, crack open a textbook could say. So the demon is kind of teasing Karis. It's like, oh, you want a miracle? You want, because he knows that as soon as Karis realizes the devil exists, he's going to realize that God exists. So he's playing with him. He's doing this on purpose. He's making the miracles a little lame so that Karis is being
Still doubtful.
teased. Yes, still doubtful.
Still,
and then
right.
Exactly. And then the holy water thing, we went back on and forth on that. But like in the book, it's very, very explicit because he comes back later. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that holy water. I just wanted to mess with you a little bit more. So that was what that was. It like the demon knew that it was tap water. He was faking it just to make Karis wonder if maybe this was just a sick girl.
Oh, okay. It's so much better to have it explained than to have it be like, yeah, I mean, that's ambiguous. No one really knows. Like that shit pisses me off. So thank you for explaining it so clearly. I really appreciate it. And lastly, my question is, there was sequels, right? There were sequels.
Yeah.
And did you see them? And what do you think of them?
We saw all of them.
All of the sequels. Yeah. So there is Exorcist 2, a movie called Legion: Exorcist 3, right?
Yeah. Exorcist 3, Legion. Yeah.
Right. We saw Exorcist 4, which was remade within a year of itself. So there's an Exorcist 4A and an Exorcist 4B.
We saw both of them.
We saw both of those. They fired the director halfway through and replaced him with somebody else. And we saw the reboot, which is called Exorcist Believer.
The requel, thank you, with Leslie Odom from Hamilton. And we saw the Exorcist TV show on Fox, and they all have their benefits. I don't know that if you like this movie, you need to watch all of the other ones at all. No.
Lester just flat out no.
Right.
But there's some people who are like, we encountered people out there who wrote in and told us Exorcist 2 is their favorite movie. It's the reason they became novelists. That's the reason they became filmmakers. So there's stuff out there, but I think really the Exorcist TV show on Fox with Gina Davis is a real sleeper. That really surprised me. That's really very excellent. Good. Yeah.
When was that?
Oh, maybe 7 years ago.
Oh,
when was that, Lester? Yeah, does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that was about 7 years ago. Yeah, that was something that we were watching kind of as a bonus thing. All of the sequels and the prequels and the requels and all that stuff we cover in our kind of like bonus material for our show. Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, and they were going to start a new requel series, but that got canceled. I don't know if you saw that, but Universal paid $400 million for the rights to 3 Exorcist movies, and then the latest Exorcist movie didn't do as well as they'd hoped, so they're retooling it now.
Whoops. Okay. All right, I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, guys, I feel enlightened, and I also awkwardly feel like I fell in love with both of you. I'm so happy you agreed to do this.
Mandy.
This was such a great discussion. I'm going to tell the world about me and my show, and then I want you to tell the world about you and your shows and where they can find you.
Awesome. Great.
Fair? Okay, so Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by the peerless Pete Wright. The theme song is Wonderstruck by Jane and the Boy. And if you want to hit me up on socials, I'm on Blue Sky as Mandy Niscast. Brand new. I'm excited about it. And I'm on Instagram at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with Ks. Please, 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 if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts, leave a review. It really helps me gain audience. So 5 stars, write a review, share your thoughts, share your questions. If you have suggestions for what I should do next, I'm totally open, and I'm just awaiting more nerdery. And if you're feeling really excited, go to makemeanerd.com and hit that join button. And that gets you your episodes ad-free and early, and bonus content as well. Guys, Lester Ryan Clark and Kenan Diaz, where can everybody find you?
Yes. So my name is Lester Ryan Clark. You can reach me on all the socials as Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Kenan Diaz, and you can find me on Letterboxd and Instagram at Howdy Kenan.
And we have a couple more shows, actually. So right after we finished the Exorcist Minute, we decided to go on to another Movies by Minute podcast, and we are now hosting Every Minute of Everything Everywhere All at Once. You can guess which movie we're covering there. Mrs. Doubtfire. No.
Yes, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes. But no, we're covering the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. We're up to minute 23, I think. We just finished recording that yesterday. We got bonus episodes for that where we kind of like look at all the past movies of all the cast there. During our Exorcist Minute run, we also got the idea to do a spin-off show called The Devil's Details, which is just the history and evolution of the devil through art and literature. So we cover Dante's Inferno. We go with John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost. We just finished how many weeks? Like 15 weeks?
18 weeks of Faust.
18 weeks of Faust. That's the Christopher Marlowe version of Faust. And then we got the Johann Wolfgang von Goethe version. And then we just finished the opera version. We're not done with Faust yet. We're still watching the silent film because Kenan wants to torture me. But yeah, so those are the three shows so far. The Devil's Details, The Exorcist Minute, and Every Minute of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
You guys are making me sound like an idiot. With Faust, is that Damn Yankees? Dare I suggest you also do the musical Damn Yankees?
It is not unlike, yes, it's like Damn Yankees. It's a little bit more like Devil and Daniel Webster, though, right?
Right. Yeah. It's the classic. It's kind of like the German legend where this guy named Faust sells his soul to the devil for money and power and all that.
That's
stuff.
Damn Yankees.
There you go.
Check it out, gents. I'm telling
we'll do
you.
Damn Yankees. We'll do Damn Yankees.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot again. And I'm going to say that Everything Everywhere All at Once is a movie I've been terrified of, and I've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps
so you watched The Exorcist instead?
Well, not terrified of, but for fear. Not, it's not a scary movie, but it's heady. I think it deals with things that would give me anxiety. I think I wouldn't understand it, and so anyone who knows me is like, "Oh, it was fantastic." You won't like it. You watch it.
Yeah, it
but
is all of those things.
Podcast.
Yeah, but incredibly, incredibly emotional. So I think like we're worried as people who are trying to cover it, like we're doing research on Nietzsche and quantum mechanics and quantum suicide and the real meaning of Schrodinger's cat. We're trying to like put ourselves in that.
Right.
But I think it's totally watchable without that. I don't think you need to know any of that stuff.
All right. I know some of those terms from Big Bang Theory.
Yo, there you go.
And I would be honored if you guys would come back and talk about that movie at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
I would love that. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
All right. Great.
Thank you, Mandy.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone listening, coming up is Wheel of Time with Audrey Kearns and The Outlander with Amy Crowfoot, new guest Amy Crowfoot, and at long last, I promised it's happening, Craven the Hunter with Adam Rose, who actually worked on the film. So everyone, please join me on the next few weeks. Thank you, Lester Ryan Clark and Kenan Diaz. You guys are amazing. Check out The Exorcist Minute. And then when Everything Everywhere All at Once starts, everybody go listen to that one. And I will see everybody next week. Thank you.
Howdy, folks. Lester and Kenan here. Believe it or not, The Exorcist Minute was actually our first show ever, which is why we don't have any bits where we tell you to go check out our other shows. But now we have other shows, so...
Like The Devil's Details, where we look at the evolution of the devil through art and literature.
Yeah, you can find all of that on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows, or on truestory.fm.
You can also head to truestory.fm/join and look for Banana for Scale.
That's the Lester and Kenan brand of shows within the True Story FM network.
Joining Banana for Scale gets you exclusive perks like an ad-free feed, new episodes a week early, and access to our Discord channels.
Plus, bonus episodes of all our shows.
Like this one, The Exorcist Minute.
Yeah, bet you didn't know we had bonus episodes for this one. We got a Halloween episode, an Xmas episode, April Fools, where we cover Repossessed, the Exorcist parody starring Linda Blair.
We look at the requel, Exorcist Believer, and also an Oscars episode where we talk about how the original 1973 film did at the Academy Awards.
And we cover the real-life exorcism case of Robbie Doe, which inspired William Peter Blatty to write his book.
Just $5 a month gets you all of that, plus you'll be helping our little podcasts grow and find more cool people like you.
Until next time.